In Britain, the face of power and who has it is changing.
It's the rise of a group of people that have influential power in their time, in their fields, that affect change. And I think that that is absolutely a fact.
I do know having a seat at the top table is an effective way of driving change.
I'm chair of the Rugby Football Union. I'm the only black chair of a national sports governing body.
I always receive the Queen, perhaps 6 or 7 times a year.
I do not feel like I'm part of the establishment at all. No, I'm still Karen, Danny's daughter from Reading, and I always will be.
I'm told that I run one of the biggest black-owned businesses in the country. And we have 14 billion under management. When I first moved over here, I felt like it was the US in the 70s. In the halls of power, in finance, in law, in politics, there was very, very little diversity.
And I remember when Diane Abbott became the first female black MP in 1987, my dad calling me into the front room where the TV was, the good room, and saying, look, anything can happen in this country if you work hard.
I think that there is a black renaissance at the moment. If you think of the things that are against this community, it's extraordinary the amount of talent that is still rising.
But I think it is untapped. I think the potential is enormous, but it needs to grow, it needs to be trained, it needs to get capital, it needs to be able to flourish.
I gravitated towards institutions, black institutions, brown institutions, that were very interested in being part of the built fabric of Britain. I designed the Stephen Lawrence Centre, the Cherry Gross Memorial, the Bernie Grant Centre, and the Rivington Place Arts Centre. I was very touched by Stephen Lawrence's story because that could have been me.
A black man was murdered horrifically. He wanted to be an architect.
Mother of 6, Cherry Gross was left paralysed from the waist down after she was shot by police.
She was maimed, she was disabled, and later died. And it took many years for the police to really admit to this extraordinary, grotesque misjustice on this family. Something that is a theme in all the work when I'm dealing with black space is that it's more than just a building, it's also a memorial. I think all architecture is political. Even just the way in which you build housing for the poor, housing for the rich, reflects a political agenda and a desire. It is not neutral.
Everyone will remember the dreadful Grenfell fire. The Thursday, I was asked by the Queen's private secretary whether I thought it would be a good idea for the Queen to visit Grenfell. That week, the Prime Minister, Theresa May, had been to visit, and so I was asked that question at probably 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The very next day, 10 o'clock in the morning, there is the Queen arriving to visit the people, to express her condolences, to thank the firemen and the policemen and so on. I remember thinking as it all happened, it was quite scary, given that we didn't know whether she was going to be booed, have things thrown at her, etc. What happened was she got out of the car and all these people applauded.
We were just come off of a little while ago, 8 years of a black president. I don't think that we're even close to that here.
In Britain, we're such a minority, it's much harder to have that kind of agency. And the way in which the government acknowledges us is very different.
The Windrush scandal for me was an absolute travesty, because when I think about my mum and dad coming over and they came to try and help build and strengthen the UK economy, to then turn them away, to then say that they didn't belong, and even now to try and help fight for compensation. And it makes you fearful, it makes you worry about how much you do really belong.
We're seen very much as a fringe minority, but actually I would argue that we're a very contributing culture to British identity. Look at modern British youth culture.
Couple young kings.
When I look at the diversity of the England rugby team and other sports, business and other sectors of society can learn that diversity is a way of making you stronger. Any team's decision to take the knee is a decision for that team, and if they want to do that and they are convinced that that is the way that they want to express themselves, it sometimes gets backlash, but on the whole, I believe that it's helped move the conversation forwards.
I have discussed with the palace, the royal household, this whole issue of race, particularly in the last 12 months since the George Floyd incident.
And the hard facts are the hard facts, whether you look at, employment, whether you look at healthcare, whether you look at economic empowerment, whether you look at education. Black people in this country, unfortunately, there is a gap.
Do you think that the palace would support BLM, the principle?
Well, the answer is easily yes. What more can we do, royal family, to bind society in this country to remove these barriers? But people that want to tear down the system, I don't have any time for.
I think the Edward Colston Memorial, one of many memorials that are very questionable in this country. I'm very clearly on a very clear side that actually sort of erasure history is really not acceptable. The idea that you write only the side of history that you prefer. This is a country which has taught a hermetic history and a monoculture, which actually I think is not necessarily, quite accurate. It's really a hybrid culture of many civilizations and groups that have made this idea, this island, Britain. And I think Black Britain is part of that story.
I see black talent every day. I see excellence every day.
My mother worked really hard. She was a jobbing shorthand typist and semi-bookkeeper, and she just about scraped enough money together to keep us going. I hope I demonstrate the fact that you can go as high as it's possible to go in this country if you've got aspiration and luck.
If I look at what things were like for me when in the 1970s, 1980s, compared to what it's like for my children today, compared to what it'll be like for their children, if you look at that long picture, every generation, every half generation, we move forward.